Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's David out of New York.
David in New York, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on? Thought I'd call in before you end the show. One question, I think I pointed out to you on Twitter, but we've heard you talk a lot about Ted Cruz and why we don't want him in office. But one thing that I've seen multiple people actually point out, and I agree with you on that point, at face value, he's terrifying. But the question is it appears that there's several donors, and I don't know, I haven't looked into it enough to know specifically who. So if you can't answer it at this point, that's fine. But it appears there's donors that both Hillary and Ted Cruz share. So the question is, what's behind that? He definitely, you know, whether it's hyperbole, whether it's what he really stands for, he's scary. There's no doubt about that. But if both of them are being funded, at least in part, by similar parties. Yeah.
So, okay, great question. Great question. I definitely don't mind taking some minutes to talk about that. Let's be sure, right? There are, even with Jeb Bush, I think there was like some 17 donors that were exactly the same that supported Jeb Bush, that supported Hillary Clinton. I mean, this entire conversation, or at least part of the conversation we've had today, has been about Republican. Sorry, it's an old habit. It's not Republican influence. It's the DLC willingly and wanting. They just wanted to run into the arms of big business, right? This was Southern conservative Democrats who wanted to get a hold of big business money and wanted to preserve and move away from more socially liberal policies so that they can keep a tight hold on middle class, working class, white Americans, right? So this was on purpose. And so that brought them into common cause, or at least into common donorship with a lot of donors that give to the Republicans. This is nothing new. I mean, this is Wall Street. Wall Street gives to Democrats just like they give to Republicans. This has been a consistent trend for a very long time. And the more we depend on business, or rather, let me start that sentence over, the less we depended on unions to be our big donor base, the more we needed to depend on on the Wall Street, on businesses, right? Because you're going to always have that eternal war, enmity between labor and capital. We moved away from labor and moved towards capital. That's what the Democrats did in the late 80s into the 90s, and that's where we are. This is the pinnacle of the DLC. So there's no big shock that Hillary Clinton has donors in common with Ted Cruz. However, that doesn't negate the fact that Ted Cruz, I don't care what nobody say, you can call me now, 857-600-0518. Ted Cruz is magnitudes of order more dangerous than Hillary Clinton and worse than Hillary Clinton. Name one thing that you dislike about Hillary Clinton. Ted Cruz wants to double down on it. Hillary Clinton has the capacity to bomb people in the Middle East. Ted Cruz wants to make the sand glow. He wants to turn the sand into glass. That's Ted Cruz's take, right? You know, Hillary Clinton wants to go to war. Ted Cruz is waiting, itching to go to war. The difference is Ted Cruz wants to go on a holy war. Ted Cruz wants to go to purge radical Islam from the earth. He wants to wage a crusade. Is there a difference? Yes, there is a distinct difference between somebody who has religious zealotry fueling their ideology and somebody, are they both going to do probably bad things? Yes. And that's just on foreign policy. If you talk about economics, like if you're frustrated with the income disparity in America and you're frustrated with the wealth that's being amassed by the top 1% to the detriment of the bottom 99%, Ted Cruz wants to go further. Hillary Clinton wants to maintain the trend, right? Hillary Clinton's not going to do anything to reverse it. Hillary Clinton's not going to do anything to soften it. She's going to maintain that trend, and Ted Cruz wants to increase it. If we're moving towards a feudal society right now at 60 miles an hour with Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton pumps it up to 65 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour, Ted Cruz is going to floor it, and then 100 miles an hour going to move us towards that society where the top 1% owns everything and the rest of us are just sharecroppers. Now, that last phrase probably was a little hyperbolic, but you get the picture. Not in terms of the acceleration that Ted Cruz wants to make. So that's economic. So foreign policy, he's worse because he wants to purge Islam, radical Islam from the earth. On economics, he's worse because he wants, Hillary Clinton is trickle down light. Ted Cruz is trickle down on steroids. I'm just going down the list for you so that you can understand. Now, hopefully and thankfully, I don't think it's going to be versus Ted Cruz. So everything we're saying right now is probably a moot point, but you guys asked. So foreign policy, economic policy, and it's socially, we don't even have to talk about it, right? There's no reason for us even to discuss the differences. If anything, Hillary Clinton's going to maintain the basic gains that the LGBTQ community has. She's not going to let it roll. Nobody's going to roll back Roe versus Wade on her watch, even though she did make some exceptions to abortions that Bernie Sanders has not made. Yes, there is a difference between them there. Bernie Sanders is actually further to the left on the right to choose than Hillary Clinton. But Ted Cruz wants to get away. What is it? With only exceptions for the life of the mother. So foreign policy, economically, and socially. And all of those things, mind you, are driven by a religious fervor that no other candidate in this race has. John Kasich doesn't have it. Donald Trump definitely doesn't have it with his 2 Corinthians ass. Bernie Sanders is pretty basically a humanist, and I don't know what Hillary Clinton is. Hillary Clinton probably is nothing. So, yes, they have common donors, but that's not the result of them being the same people. That's a result of them having similar economic policies and similar business interests. But that economic baseline, Ted Cruz wants to amp that up. Comparison, to me, Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton economically may be different by 2%. Maybe 2%, maybe 5% on the tax code. Maybe. Not a statistically significant difference. Nothing that's going to change the economic paradigm. Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton will most certainly maintain this Reaganomics economic paradigm that we've been living under for the last 35 years. Ted Cruz wants to double down on it. So sorry, guys. Like, this is a moot point because I don't think Ted Cruz is going to make it. But if they manage to pull something out at the convention and it's Ted Cruz versus, I don't care if it's Ted Cruz versus, I don't know. I don't have a good example. I was going to say the devil, but I'm sure you guys would agree that's exactly what it would be.